Hello, everyone, and welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin, and today I have a very special guest, Evan from Pop Culture 33. We'll be discussing Song of the South, one of the most controversial films of all time. So without further ado, let me introduce Evan. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am good. Ready to discuss.
Yes, ready to discuss Song of the South. Yes, and so why don't you introduce yourself, Evan, and kind of explain what your channel's about and your love for Disney.
So I'm Evan from Pop Culture 33. I do love Disney. I'm trying to be a Disney historian, which that means is I'm not published officially, but I read, I write. I have my master's in American history, focus on Walt Disney and his effect on our culture. So I have written extensively on him and read a lot on him. I have many books behind me that I enjoy. And my channel is really just, I haven't posted at all this year, trying to get it back up. I just started a new job, but it's just about what I love and I talk about, and it's almost mostly Disney. So
Nice.
If you like Disney, come over here and I talk about other stuff too.
Nice. Yeah, so I got the right guy for the job, right? Yes, no, we've been talking back and forth a lot recently, especially about Disney and many other things. And yeah, I've just been super excited to talk with you today.
Me too.
And with that, let me bring this up. So I got a little banner here. And we'll start talking about our thoughts on the review itself. So let me bring up a little slide here. So yeah, controversial film discussions is the first in this series. Trying to think if I want to do it once a month, once a quarter, that sort of thing. But basically, we're going to start out talking about the film itself and then get into some other subtopics. So without further ado, let's get into your thoughts, Evan, overall on the plot for Song of the South.
The plot is pretty simple. I think the script is not as fleshed out as it should be. It is not at times very clear when this movie is set, in the sense of this movie is technically set after the Civil War, during antebellum, years after. So Reconstruction, so slavery is over and stuff like that. But what is it? They can't think of the kid's name. Blank.
Johnny.
Johnny is upset because his dad is going back to Atlanta to do some work, and he's just still upset. And he goes around, and then he meets Ramus, who tells him stories of a rabbit and a bear and a fox, and kind of gives him some life lessons, and it comes all together at the end. So the plot is very, I think, simple and basic. Nothing too outrageously. It just it's not very clear at times of where it's set in time. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, for sure. And you have many people speculating online when it takes place. Like some say it's during the Civil War. Some say it's like 1901. So it's like not really clear when it is taking place.
Yeah.
All right. And then overall, what score did you give the plot out of 5?
I'll probably give it around. It's hard. If I had to do the plot, it would just be like a 2.
A 2.
There's certain aspects that I really love, and it does well, but it has a lot of weaknesses that it can't be for me above a 2. If I had to, it's right 1 out of 5, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, a 2.
Nice. Well, I actually gave it lower than you. I give it a 1 out of 5.
Okay, I was kinder.
Yeah. But kind of a lot of what you were saying wasn't really clear when it's set. I was kind of confused, the whole premise of it. Like, does Johnny want his dad to be back? It wasn't really clear to me what the real plot was. To me, it seemed like, kind of like with Fun and Fancy Free, the real emphasis was on the animation aspect, not really the live action part of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, and also, I just had a hard time seeing how happy everybody was on the plantation. I was like, that's not very realistic. Like, that kind of knocked it down for me too.
And it's not very clear on who's who. because if you notice, like they meet the little boy, the African American boy, and then
Uh-huh.
you meet the little girl who's white and poor, and it's just very confusing on who's who and what's the relationship, and it's just gets lost. Um, I think I give it a little bit higher because there's some life lessons in it that is redeemable, but
For
yeah,
sure.
it's not. Yeah, I agree. The animation part is amazing to watch, but
Yeah.
not very good on plot.
No, it's very, very weak. Um, let's see, anything else I wanted? Yeah, just my favorite parts of the plot were the animated parts. Like that
Yeah.
was it. I didn't really like any of the live action stuff. All right. So we'll move on to acting. So what were your thoughts on the acting overall for Song of the South?
For a typical Disney film, I think it's really above par on some of their live action films. The classic ones like Pollyanna, when you get those are really good, but you also have some really bad Disney acting part where the kids. So Johnny is the weakest link, I think, out of everyone. The little kid.
Yes.
Um, the grandma is annoying, but her lines, I think that's more script than her character.
Mhm.
Ramus, I think, has this presence and holy cow, blank again, the actor who plays him. So
Oh, I have it here. It is James Basket.
James Baskett, and I think he does well with the character in the sense of acting. Some of the issues that you have with the character, I don't think is his fault. I think it's the script's fault of his issue. So, sorry, my light just turned off.
That's all good. No, I agree. I think he, like you said, he has a great presence. He to me was the highlight of the acting. Him
Yeah.
and even if it was a small role, Hattie McDaniel as well. I really like her a lot. She's a great actress.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's not, but she's not playing anything special in this character.
Mm.
You've seen this character often in her films, so there's nothing new with this one for her.
Right, right. And I'd even say it's more of an extended cameo than anything, not really
Yeah,
a role, if that makes sense. All right. So, what score out of 5 do you give the acting then?
I'll give it a 3. I think
3?
it's a solid enough that go. You lose the 2 points for Johnny,
Yeah.
but that kid was special.
Yeah.
He, so yeah, he was just a little whiny for me for a kid. Even when he's upset, like even when he's happy, he has the same like tone throughout the film. Even happy, sad, okay, he's just a little whiny.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with that. I also gave it a 3 out of 5. Bobby Driscoll, who later did Peter Pan, he plays Johnny, I believe. And yeah, he's not the best actor.
No.
Like my favorite scene, not because it was a good scene, but just because of how ridiculous it was. So his parents are kissing because the dad has to go, and he just gives this ugly, like, oh, like I can't tell if he's sad or disgusted. Like it's terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah.
It's not good.
No, and I mean, yeah, he's a kid actor, but I thought the girl, I don't remember her name, but I thought she was great. She's way better than Johnny is.
Yeah, I don't. I wish she had a bigger role. I think in the other boy too, he was better, and I
Yeah,
think everyone else was better than the kid
the Johnny.
Johnny.
I know we're just following him all around the whole time. It's like, do we have to follow him? Like, I
Yeah,
don't like this character. Yeah, but yeah, I think I already said, but just in case, I gave the acting a 3 out of 5.
yeah.
All right, what were your thoughts on the directing, like the, um, like what the staging, the direction of the film, that sort of thing?
I terrible. Because if you're looking at the directing as live action, it's
Mm.
terrible. Like I know I have like a poor quality because it hasn't been released physically on DVD,
Uh huh.
VHS here, Laserdisc over in Japan. So we have to deal with that. Um,
Yeah.
but there's just some scenes where it's like so dark. It's like I can't even see anyone. Why? Like especially like when Johnny's running in the forest and we're first meeting Ramus. It's like
Uh-huh.
we like you can't see anyone. Like you just maybe see a light glowing in their face, and it's just ridiculously shot. I and I think some of have to blame like the acting and some of the other things we've already mentioned. And the issue has to come down to the director. So I put it at I can't even think of the director's name. I didn't look it up. I put it at his feet
Yeah. Well, they had technically two. So they had,
because of the animation, right?
yeah, the animation was a different guy. That was Wilfred Jackson, and live action was Harvey Foster.
Yeah. So Harvey Foster, not good. Cartoon side, it's hard to say. There's just something magical about this time in Disney animation with live action. It's just a magical time, even though it's not the best because some of the story, once again, script issues aren't always blessed. Like, what is the life lesson we're trying to learn from this little
Yeah.
story? But just watching the animation is just amazing. So as a direction on that side, I'll give it a 4. But as the live action part, it's a 1.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat as you. I thought the live action was terrible. Feels all over the place, disjointed. The animated segments were perfect, concise. Like you knew exactly what was happening. Like I said, that's the highlight of the movie. I kind of wish that was the movie,
Yeah.
It's like, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 to kind of round it out because I agree. I would have given the live action a 1, but I really love the animation. And they don't work together, if that makes sense. Like they're tonally different from each other. So it's again like Fun and Fancy Free, where you have the Jack and the Beanstalk, then Edgar Bergen and some kids. Like what? Like this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. That to me, that's more of like that gets away because that's more like TV, whatever, and like that. But for this as a movie, like if you got this lovely image of Zippity Dude all day, and then all of a sudden when it cuts to when it goes back to live action, like the scene just becomes dark and
Yeah.
doesn't even fit into that he was actually walking out there. It's just it doesn't go well between the animation to live action. Like something went wrong in that process that I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. One scene I could think of in particular is when they're in Uncle Remus's cabin. It's like super dark. You can barely see anything. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
what am I looking at here?
You can't see anything. There's a time when I'm looking down at the the little like fast forward thing, and like literally there's like blocks of it. It's so dark it just looks like black scenes down there. It's like going,
Oh my
did they even
goodness.
have anything? You turn it on and it's like, oh okay, there they are.
Yeah.
It's bad.
And that could be just the quality of the editions we have. I mean, it's never been digitized, so who knows what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, so based on what we've seen, I've never seen the original print. I don't know if that's it, but even if I'll have a hard time to see if the original print is going to be any brighter because you could kind of tell that where else would they add light if that makes sense? Unless it's
Right.
just really dark film. I don't see where else they like a dirty film or something like that. I don't know where else they would add light even from just the scene that we're looking at.
Right.
So
All right. So, kind of speaking of that, let's move on to our thoughts on cinematography and special effects. And so, yeah, what are your thoughts on that overall?
I think pretty much the same. But if you look at special effects, the animation part, it's well. But if you had to go with the cinematography of them working together and having purpose, because they're in a beautiful place and it just doesn't look that way. And there's some great scenes like when we first meet the girl, they're outside. You see the fastness of the field and stuff like that. But then even then, it's just really close up. So you have this, what they say, a plantation and stuff like that. And it's supposed to be a big house and all this, but you don't see any of that. You just see like a big pillar. You don't ever get to see the grandeur of what this place is supposed to be, and the I just don't think it worked out as well. So for me, if I had to do it, I would give it a 2 because of just so many issues.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to kind of disagree with you there, but only because I focused on the animation for this.
Okay. Yeah.
Gave it a 4 out of 5. Like, I really love the scenes with Uncle Remus singing, like in this scene here. Beautiful transition with a live action actor with animated characters. Really interacts with them really well. There's a couple scenes though where it's kind of obvious he's not talking to a cartoon character. Like, he's like looking up here, the cartoon character's down here. It just doesn't match up very well. But for the most part, it looked really, really good. And I wish this was the movie, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to music. What are your thoughts on the music overall?
Has one of the best Disney songs of all time. So Zippity Doo Dah Day, I grew up hearing it. It was all around the parks when I went to Disneyland all the time. And it's just a classic. And the issue is that song is so perfect as just a song and a good feel, but all the other songs fall in comparison because you have this, like, you know, it's not like a Mary Poppins where you have the super dope you know, great songs, but all the other songs hold up across Mary Poppins. You could sing them, A Spoonful of Sugar, you have them, but no one knows, and even there's none of them else are memorable as Zippity Doo Dah Day. So, but they're not bad, they're not terrible. So I will go with a 4 because Zippity Doo Dah Day is a perfect song. I love that song, but loses a star because the other songs don't match as well with that one. Because I can't even think. I just watched it yesterday. I can't think of any of the other songs.
Right.
So that tells you something.
No, for sure. All right. Well, I agree. I actually gave it a 5 out of 5. But I do agree in the sense that not a lot of them are memorable. But Zippity Doo Dah was just incredible. I love that song. And you probably know this, but it actually won an Academy Award for Best Original Song. So I think it definitely deserved that award. It's definitely an earworm, though. Like, once you hear it, you're going to be singing it to yourself all day long.
Yeah. And that wasn't the only Academy Award the movie got. Too.
Right, it got a couple more. Yeah.
Yeah. And an honorary, because Ramus got an honorary Academy Award for his part in this. So the movie got a lot of recognitions when it came out for its time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see what else. One more thing. I kind of like the How Do You Do song. It's not as memorable as Zippity Doo Dah, but I remember just hearing that in the Splash Mountain ride. Yeah.
Yes, I that was the other one. I couldn't think of the name, but that's another good one.
Yeah. So I could definitely see why they picked those two for Splash Mountain, because they're, you know, catchy, easy to remember, and all that. And yeah. All right. So overall, what's your score for the film? Kind of adding all that up and giving the average.
Or am I supposed to do the math? Did you take it down? I didn't do the math.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
If I had to go with the average of the film, for me as a Disney fan, it's about a 3 overall. But once again, my rating is that where it falls in context. But if I had to rate it as a film outside of my Disney fandom, I'll probably knock it down to a 2. So, if that makes sense, it's one of those. I personally love aspects of this movie. I personally hate aspects of this movie, but it's still there's enough to warm my heart that I like it. But that's also my Disney fandom definitely shining through more than my film critic coming through.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think I'm in the same boat. I also gave it a 3 out of 5. I can't decide if it's because of my memories of Splash Mountain and the songs, or because it really is. I enjoyed parts of it. and just the animation. Like, I'm a sucker for animation, so could be that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was okay. It's definitely, if I had to rank it amongst the other ones, it's probably in the middle. Like, not great, but not super terrible. I mean, there's aspects of it that are terrible, but
You could
I'd
tell
say a
that the
mid.
love and you could tell for this one the love and care of the Disney's touch was not quite there. Um, I think this is about the time he starts building the Disneyland idea. He starts doing other things than just because he goes from animation. And if you notice, like when he goes to live action, animation starts to wane because Disney's focusing over here, and he doesn't kind of replace himself as a leader in these parts. People kind of have to go, who's doing what? And so then
Right.
he's kind of moving into other creations at this time. It's the start because Disneyland opens up like 9 years after this because this came out in 1946. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that 9 years is going to be Disneyland. So you kind of wonder how much overseeing from Walt Disney himself was there. And if you know any movie that does really well at this time, Walt Disney usually had a bigger hand in it than other films that don't do as well.
Yeah. Now that makes sense. A lot of the package movies in this era, a lot of the other ones
Mm-hmm.
like that, they're just okay.
Yeah.
They're not super good. And it could also be due to the fact that, just coming off of World War II, they're raising funds, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, for Disneyland and Cinderella, I think, at this time too. So they have other focuses. This just seems like, hey, let's push this out to make some money so we can fund other things, other
Yeah.
projects.
And because of World War II, you bringing up a good point. Disney does not have a big cash flow because with Pinocchio and a lot of other films that came out during World War II, they lose the whole Europe market. And then Disney helps make propaganda films for the military, actually military training films and all that stuff. And he only does it as cost. He does not make a profit like some other film companies at the time who also made a profit making movies. But Walt Disney only said, this is cost. And part of the deal was, what's very interesting is that his animators were technically drafted into the army, so they wouldn't be have to go off and fight, so they could help still make the military films for Walt Disney. So,
Wow.
but that says a lot to coming out of the flow and traffic, and that could also be why we have kind of a poor quality live action like film and stuff like that. It's just they don't have the money to back this big project that they wanted.
Right, because it's, from my understanding, they started developing it a lot earlier, like 37 or 38, like not long after Snow White. So yeah, the war definitely contributed a bit to it.
Yeah.
All right. So now we'll move on to the next segment, which is controversies surrounding Song of the South. So just kind of as a disclaimer, neither one of us agrees with any of the horrible messaging that is in this movie. I don't think it's an accurate representation of the Reconstruction era. I think it makes it a little too jovial. And what else do I want to add? And we're also two white dudes. We don't know a whole lot about about how negative this film impacted other races. So yeah, just want to get that out of the way.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those movies that sometimes we could talk about historically and the purpose and the people behind it, but we don't always get to speak on how it affects others outside of it. Like once you create art, it goes out to the public, and the creator doesn't always get to dictate how the public sees it. It's the public gets to do that. And so there's definitely some controversy around it and the making of beforehand that led to some of the issues I think the movie is plagued by. So, and we could definitely get into some of those topics. I am prepared.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. I just have a couple quotes here about the film itself, why it hasn't been released on Disney Plus. One from Bob Iger. He says, Song of the South won't necessarily sit right or feel right to a number of people today. But then it also says, but others have called Disney Plus to host the movie as kind of a historical artifact. So that's from IndieWire. So you kind of have some people like, like Bob Iger saying it's not going to sit right with a lot of people today. But then you also have some saying, yeah, but it's also a historical artifact. So it's like there's kind of I wouldn't say a war, but kind of like a debate there on the state of the
debate.
movie. And yeah.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about where we land on that aspect? Should it be on Disney Plus, or should we talk about the controversies and then?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking we could save that for the end, but for now we could just talk about them just as is, and maybe offer our opinions. But I think for the most part, just kind of addressing what these controversies are to kind of let people think about it, ruminate about it, and then come with their own conclusion.
So is there a particular one you want to start with? There's a couple.
Yeah, there's a couple, right? Well, we could kind of start with this one here with the protests outside of the Song of the South.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let's see. I don't know if this is specifically from the NAACP, but let's start with that. I know you have a lot of notes on that, so why don't you go ahead and start with that?
Yeah, so the secretary of the NAACP, if I say that wrong, please forgive me. I'm dyslexic, and when you have initials like that, I mess up, especially when there's double. Walter White was the secretary at this time. So there's a lot of stories around him. One, supposedly he was invited to come to the set and also come to read the script to see if he had any concerns. But supposedly Walter White was unable to make that meeting. And we don't know why the meeting was happening. There's also, I'm going to say rumors because we're not confirmed. We have just stories, but we have no confirmed evidence that some of this stuff took place. Supposedly, the one rumor was that Walt Disney was lied to about it, that the meeting did happen and that it went well. And even though the meeting didn't happen, we do not, but that's just a rumor about that. So White comes out and he actually writes in a couple articles on it and talking about how bad the movie is before he's even seen it. He hasn't seen an ounce of it. And so that kind of sparked the protesting before the movie comes out. Not the same. It's kind of, I don't know if you remember when John Carter came, that movie.
Yeah.
Just a whole bunch of bad reviews, but the movie was never released. Like, how did all these thousands of people see this movie? And it wasn't, to my knowledge, pre-screened for credits. So no one has seen it, but everyone was talking about how bad it was before it ever was released. And so for like this, a lot of people were talking about the film without the movie being released. So you have a lot of protests from the very beginning. But White is also accused of not liking Hattie McDonald. Is that her name?
I think McDaniel.
That he did not like her at all. And that he was very upset that she was in the film and actually has been accused of going after the film, not because the film is good or bad or whatever. It's just because she was in it and was not happy with her success and what she has done and what she has said in the past about it. And so that is another play in some of the historical context of White's motives behind his attack on the movie. We're not quite sure where they were coming from for it, but to our knowledge, he did not, all of it, he had not seen the movie before he wrote and attacked the film. So, and I think that sparked a lot of the conversation and skewed an kind of maybe an honest conversation about the film that could have maybe happened, but should have happened before it made. I kind of wanted to know if you go back in time sheet, if White made that meeting and see what things could change or would have changed because of his concerns, because he brings up some concerns that are definitely in the movie that are real, that we could maybe talk different, but I think that's kind of it for the protestings that I have. So
yeah, let's see if I have anything more to add to that. Not much left to that point.
You think you have that? Do you have that quote from Hattie McDaniel that she came because I think that quote was a reply to White that you found was one of the reply to White.
Yes, so let me pull that up here.
Unless you were saving it for later. Sorry if I jumped the gun.
No, you're fine. Can't remember where I placed it. This is the problem, guys, when you have too many notes here. Oh, yes, here we go. So, Hattie McDaniel. So, she told the American publication, The Criterion, which was a magazine back then, said, if I had for one moment considered any part of the picture degrading or harmful to my people, I would not have appeared therein. And her co-star, James Baskett, he also had a quote. He said, I believe that certain groups are doing my race more harm in seeking to create dissension than can ever possibly come out of the Song of the South.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting having kind of their comments about it versus, you mentioned the NAACP and other organizations kind of protesting it. And yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, it goes into, I always, sometimes when an actor or a director who makes the film, they have their point of view and they know what they're doing and they're talking with people. But sometimes you have an idea and then you put it out there, then other people don't know what you're doing. Like, when you're writing and you're, oh, this is a great idea. And you have someone read it, go, I don't have a clue what you said. I know it makes perfect sense. Right, so sometimes if you're part of the making of it, you kind of sometimes can't always see the weaknesses of what you're making. So I wonder how much that played. But I think that was definitely a debate that was happening that a lot of people don't bring up in the conversation of the controversy.
Yeah, definitely. And it makes you wonder too, because both Hattie and is his name James, they're both Academy Award recipients. Now, she didn't win one for this movie, but for Gone with the Wind. But still, like, they're both the first African Americans to receive Academy Awards. So,
well, he gets an honorary one. He does not win. He does not win. He was given an honorary one, and a lot of people. I've read a couple of articles about how that was more of a slap in the face than it was an honor.
Gotcha.
For them. I don't know. I couldn't find any quotes from James about how he felt about his win. So, or getting the reward. But I do know Walt Disney put a lot of money behind him trying to say, hey, he should be nominated. He should be doing that. But it shows at the time of racism, Walt Disney is spending this money trying to get him nominated, but he couldn't even go and sit in the same spot. He had to go sit in the back and enter through a back door, and couldn't even stay at a hotel near the Academy Awards. He had to go stay where he was allowed to stay because he was black. So right. you still have this
crazy,
really weird time where here he's being honored, but then he doesn't even get to enjoy the party.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point there. It was a way different timeline or time period, I should say. So I think we should also remember that aspect. Like, it's a totally different country we had back then when talking about Song of the South, and just the controversies around it too.
Yep. And I do say sometimes, like, you can look at a product or a film and say, hey, this is a product of its time, and we can look past it. But sometimes it doesn't excuse what they did. Sometimes they purposely put it in there to be racist, to put down women, to do whatever. Its goals and intentions were not pure and a mistake or a product of their time. And we've just learned from it. So sometimes when we look at these movies, we can't always use that, it's a product of their time, as an excuse for things they did. We have to look at a bigger picture to make that judgment. Because I hear that a lot of the time for people who like songs. It's a product of its time. It's okay. Right? There's certain aspects that were not okay at its time either.
Right. I mean, we got the protesting right here, like,
yep.
Even when it came out. So, yeah. Let's see. I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention about it. I don't have much else to add to this aspect, but yeah, it's interesting uh, how even back then they had controversies around it. It wasn't just recently, recent memory.
Oh, I don't want to quote it exactly. One of these books I have, they like to start kind of like the beginning of the civil rights around some certain events, and Song of the South is kind of like where he likes to start his talk of the movements of the civil rights movement all the way back in the 50s after the war, saying this is the start, and Song of the South is kind of like this precursor to the bigger debate that's coming. And I can't remember who it is, so I shouldn't be saying it as a historian. But,
That's
yeah,
right.
so
Oh, that's funny. Let's see.
but I'm not being graded on this, right?
Right? No, there's an examination at the end. Um, One other thing I wanted to mention too is that Song of the South was based off of some old stories that were collected by Joel Chandler Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any notes about that too?
About the
Just
the
about how it
book.
was collected? Yeah, about the book.
Yeah, they're just a collection of stories. I know, very basic. A
Hmm.
collection of stories that slaves in African American culture told about it. And I think that's going to be one of the major downfalls of what Disney does to it. He Disneyfies it too much, because these stories are about um, um, so outsmarting the people in power,
Hmm.
outsmarting the people who control you, outsmarting, and they kind of just turn it into a joke, kind of like in the cunning of Bugs Bunny or the Roadrunner. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't go deep enough to how rich these stories were. There, he Disneyfies, because the term Disneyfies is he takes a story and just change it. Peter Pan, he makes it
Yeah.
nicer, because if you ever read Peter Pan, Peter Pan's not a nice guy, you know.
Right. Right.
Like, if you want to, like, he supposedly kills lost boys if they want to leave the island. He does not. He's not a good person. But Disney doesn't add the aspect. Snow White, he even takes the queen, or he doesn't do as much to it. So it's called Disneyfied. Just makes it friendly, more fun, more time. Because
Hmm.
at the time of the war, you want these good times, depression. You want more happier stories. You don't want these sad stories. So he does it. But I think it does a disservice to some of these stories that they did, and stuff like that, because it just takes away the umph. I was trying to find the quote I had on it, um, and do that, because one person writes it really well, but I didn't mark it, or I did and it fell out because I thought I did. So, but does that make sense? Is that
No. Yeah. Absolutely. That's kind of the point I was going to bring up too. That these were kind of more like Brothers Grimm type of storylines, where, like you said, they overcome their oppressors and whatnot, and sometimes it works for them to Disneyfy, like in the case of like Snow White or Sleeping Beauty. They're kind of depressing, but these ones, this is about escaping slavery, right? It's like, I don't know if you should Disneyfy that. you know, I I don't know if this was a good match, honestly. Like picking these stories to
yeah?
adapt.
I found the quote I wanted.
Oh, good.
So it comes from Willits in this lovely book on diversity in Disney films. It's a collection of essays from lots of different historians and tech. He goes, she says, specifically, it is the bastardization of characters taken from traditional African folk tales that survived the Middle Passage and were transformed by enslaved Africans in this country. Disney's reinterpretation of these treasure folklore characters is so offensive that it forever changed how African Americans view them. As a result, characters include bear, rabbit, and bear fox, originally celebrated by African diaspora people, for their endless cunning ways of outwitting abusive whites, were later depicted by white writers as simply lazy and foolish.
Mm.
And so it just takes the beauty in what they had of it and the meaning, and kind of ruins it for the people who did enjoy it and for the future generations. So
Yeah.
I thought she said it perfectly. The issue with adapting the story, what Disney did it's the same story of Mary Poppins. Disney
Yeah.
does that.
Yeah. Yep. Now it does make me wonder though, with them not banning but self-censoring the movie, that now we don't even know about those stories as much anymore. That's kind of my worry too. Is that we won't be able to say, what is this based on? And then you look at it, you're like, oh, this is another Disneyifying, like Little Mermaid, right? Like Little Mermaid is super depressing, the actual story. So there's that aspect too.
Yeah. The introduction of things. Like I love watching, exposing students or my son to movies and then have them go spark other interest, and locking it away. Does that hurt the future generations, or does it? It's a fine line that sometimes we have to do with art, and that's one to talk. I think could talk about that a little bit later, like what to do with it, right?
Right. Okay. See if there's anything else I want to mention before we move on. Not really much here, but a lot of the articles that I myself have read, I've put in the description of this video. So if you guys want to study even further for yourselves, go ahead and check those out as well. Got some great stuff from IndieWire, /Film, even New York Times. I found an article about a review from when it came out. That was really cool. So yeah, make sure to check those out as well to kind of be a supplement to this movie here.
And also check out,
movie, but
there are 2 books on the subject. So
yes. Yep. In fact, I even think the cover is that picture here.
Yeah, this one is that one. Yeah. Who's Afraid of the Song of the South and then Disney's Most Notorious Film. So those 2 books are actually a good introduction if you want to even go deeper into the subject.
Yep. All right. So now we'll move on to the next topic, which is about Splash Mountain. All right. So my kind of thoughts about talking this is kind of the history of Splash Mountain, and then kind of now how Disney's changing it to the Tiana ride. And so growing up, did you go to Disneyland a lot and go Splash Mountain before we get into it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. To me, this was one of my favorite rides. And it introduced me to Song of the South and those characters and whatnot. And it did for lots of people too. But what are your thoughts overall on the ride of Splash Mountain? It's kind of
the ride of Splash Mountain. I love it. So we went to Disneyland twice last year, and part of the reason is we wanted to ride it before it goes. We filmed it our last time we did it, and we went in September, and so we filmed. I made sure I brought my waterproof GoPro whatever to film it.
Yeah.
So I love the ride, but the ride doesn't do any kind of justice to the story. Once again, it's too Disney-fied. It takes out the thing. And then when people go get their hands on Song of the South and watching the depiction of that time period and the things that we said, the happy-go-lucky and not dealing with the Jim Crow laws and all the stuff living in that time. So you see a family could easily go that I could see not being the most healthiest way of exploring the topic, if that makes sense. And I don't know about you. You see people in the line trying to talk about the movie, and they really don't know anything about it. They have no concept of what it is and why it's not released and what it is. And you just hear people talk about it. It just kind of sometimes breaks my heart more than it does things, hearing other people do. And I sometimes chime in. Sometimes I just tick off people because they don't want to hear the information. They don't want a history class.
Right.
But so for me, I'm going to be sad because I grew up with the ride, but I'm also very excited for it to change. Now, do I think the title of the new ride is good? No. But I'm very excited to see Tiana in the parks and having this ride. I love Princess and the Frog movie. My son loves it, and I I'm excited for it because two, I don't think Disney will release the film, and with them not releasing the film, this ride is kind of just pointless in the sense of the theming. But am I going to miss it and be sad? Yes. I'm a little sad that my daughter won't be able to ride it, but I'm also excited for the future. I'm not a Disneyland purist. I'm fine with stuff changing and moving on, and like we're sad about Bugs Life leaving and we have Marvel Land, but we're also very excited for Marvel Land. So
Right.
yeah. So
Okay,
that's
yeah.
my view on the ride.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the camp, if there is a camp, I don't think there is, but I think it should stay the same just because it is the only depiction we have of Song of the South. Now, granted, it is a very troubled movie and all that, but at the same time, it does spark conversation, right? Like they could use it as a teaching tool, if that makes sense. And I also just love the log ride. I think that's so fun too. But just looking at the history of the ride, it really just seemed more like an afterthought, not really a well thought out thing. Like they reused a bunch of animatronics and all that. It's like wasn't that much love put into the ride.
I mean, Eisner came on, so this was kind of like his little baby and whatever, and Disney was having its rocky spot when didn't have the money, right?
Yeah.
And he picks this, and it's the weirdest thing to pick because they literally around this time like said we're not going to release the film, but here's now a ride based on the movie we're not going to release. I'm like, why? What? So it just didn't make sense at the time, like why they did it. But I was a kid and whatnot when it came out, so I didn't know about that. But looking back, it didn't make sense why Eisner did it, except for it was their property and they could use characters and they needed more rides. They needed more thrill rides because Disneyland was being thought of as just a kiddie ride. There's nothing thrilling for older kids or adults, and I think they came up with this, and that's kind of was the driving factor was let's get a log ride in there. What can we theme a log ride around? Well, we don't have much of it else. Let's do Splash Mountain. Let's do that.
Well, and even the name, like that comes from the movie Splash. Like they were trying to promote the live action movies Disney's doing. It's like, is there really much love and thought put into this ride?
Yeah. And I guess the only like major sad part, I think we technically lose a mountain at the park. That's about my only side, because they're not going to use the word mountain because you don't have mountains in the bayou. I can't think of the name right now, but so we technically lose a mountain because a lot of people just love going, say, I'm going to ride all the mountains today. I'm in the ride all the mountain rides, and you technically lose them. So that's a little sad.
Right. Well, and I don't know if you saw any pictures or not, but I saw on the news, like on the last day, there were thousands of people lined up to get onto it just to be the last ones, It's like, I hope the Tiana ride can do that, but I don't know, man. Like,
any ride. I mean, if just to let you know, when Bugs Land was going away, there was long lines for the Caterpillar Heinleich's little ride that no one ever went on, but now it's being taken off. Now everyone's going on.
Now everyone's going. That makes sense.
Yeah, so the hype of the last day was more of it just being the last day, not that. I mean, it's a popular ride. Everyone goes on it. But they're not changing the ride. They're just changing the theming. So it's going to be the same ride. And I don't think enough people care for it to go, I'm never going to ride it because it's no longer Splash Mountain. There's going to be some of them, but I don't think there's enough about that for it. Because remember when Space Mountain became Hyperspace Mountain?
Yes, I do remember that.
That was and everyone thought that was a permanent change, and everyone hated it and wasn't going to ride it. Those people went on and rode it and had fun.
Yeah,
I personally love Hyperspace Mountain. That's my favorite version of it. But what I'm saying is a lot of people are still going to ride it. They're going to have it, and they're going to tell stories. It's no different than when my dad says, I remember when this was here. Like, we ride Winnie the Pooh. We don't have the bears anymore.
Right, the country bears.
Country bears, yeah. But guess what? We just talk about it. We tell our the younger generation about it, and it becomes a story. So, but to your point that you made about like it could be using a teaching tool, the fact that Disney has not done that for over since the 1980s, they're not going to do it in the future. So I rather get
Yeah.
them. I rather get something that kids are watching now to get them excited to go, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
so. Tiana will maybe bring some kids who are able to ride the ride that might not ride the ride because they have, what is Splash Mountain? Why do I want to ride it? Like they go, oh, Tiana's ride, and they get to experience a lovely log ride. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that whole area changing for it because it makes sense because it really was kind of this un like confusing things. So next thing, that's another day to fix Tomorrowland. But
Oh my gosh, that's a
I'm
disaster.
yeah
Tomorrowland.
yeah
Oh,
yeah. But to my point, I'm excited for it. I hope they do it well, and I think it will be a big hit. And it's nice to have another like female lead ride, in my opinion, too. We
yeah.
don't have enough of those, and the fact that it's an African American princess too is a strong side. So I'm excited.
Yeah. I am too. I mean, I do like a lot of the updates they do. And I just hope they don't change the whole ride itself. Like, I just love the whole log ride aspect of
To
it.
yeah, to
Yeah.
my knowledge, that all stays. They're not messing
Okay.
with the track. I have not heard that they are. Now, doesn't mean they won't. I just have not read anything. To my knowledge, it's just changing the facade. It's
Yeah.
just changing the theming of the ride. I have not heard that they're going to be messing with the tracks or anything.
Yeah. And I mean, at least, like you said, it fits in, right? You know, it takes place
Yeah,
in the bayou and all that. That's New Orleans Square. It's going to fit fine.
yeah.
Um, Now, I did notice something interesting, though. You know, people are kind of concerned as to why they decided to change the ride. You know, you have the side saying, is it because of, protests? Is it because of petitions? Or is it just because, like you mentioned, nobody knows what Song of the South is, but people know what,
Yeah,
what's it called? Prince of the Frog is, right? So
yeah.
that's an interesting discussion point, too. Um,
Well, we
I don't
have,
know if you
if
read too
we
much
take,
about that.
I have, because we were trying to figure out when Disney decided to do this, because this happened. They made the announcement during 2020, and we all know what kind of year that was
Yeah.
for the world. And we don't know if they found peer pressure from that, and a lot of people accuse it. But Disney says, no, this has been our plan for quite a few years. Um, but we're taking the opportunity to announce it now because when we start opening it up back up, come ride it, that we're going to take it away. They just didn't know when would be a good start date to do that. And I think they just saw the opportunity that this might be a good time to announce it and let you do. That's what I've read Disney side is. And I have no other evidence to disagree with what they said. Like,
Mhm.
so was it just bad timing in the sense of did it not go over well with some fans? I think so. But really at that time we were losing Iger. Chet Peck
Yeah.
was, doing his mess up. You had
Yeah.
2020 and all of this stuff. So no matter when they were going to announce this was not going to go over well. But when I'm in the parks and I hear people doing it, the only people I hear that are very not happy are the purists. They don't want to see the parks grow at all. They don't even like Star Wars Land,
Mm.
they want it to be exactly how it was in 1955 when it opened. Actually, not true. When like Haunted Mansion was open, like that's it. Anything that
Right,
won't
right, right.
touch. So, but I think a lot of people are going to be sad too because you're not going to ride. That's for us in Bugs Land. Like my son rode a lot of those, and my daughter has a good age. He can't take her. He was like, I wish I could take my sister on those rides. I remember having fun, and I think that's going to be the sad part. But what's nice is hopefully we get to ride the ride. It's just going to be different.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't hated any of the changes they've made, so I look forward to it. Yeah, I hope it's good. That's all I can say is
Yes.
I hope it's good because, oof. it was a very popular ride, Splash Mountain. So hopefully
I'm more at ease that Iger's on back, and hopefully that's better. I was really nervous about Cheapek. I call him Cheapek because he was so cheap.
Definitely.
Cheapek, and he didn't seem to have a creative side to oversee, and he seemed to do that. But I feel more comfortable now and excited than I was before because of that. And you could just see Josh DiMalo, because he's the guy who oversees all the parks. He seems more happy and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what happens more because Iger is back. But I don't think do you have a timeline how long it's supposed to be? Because it's closed. Is it supposed to open in 2025?
Let's see. I have it right here. Plan is to unveil updated late 2024.
Okay.
For the US ones.
Yeah. So probably 2025. Late 24.
Yeah. Right. It's like it's probably going to be January of 25 maybe.
Because they're taking that all down. I did hear someone say, no evidence, that the reason they put a longer date, it could have been done faster, but because of the supply chain issues on some materials, they wanted to account for longer time in case they couldn't get everything in on a timely manner and tick off more of us that it's going to be delayed. So I heard that they could have possibly opened it earlier 2024, but they pushed it out just in case they have delays on materials.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. And especially like you said, if they're really just doing a theme change, not necessarily the whole structure and all of that.
But they're taking everything down outside. So all the theming outside, to my knowledge, is being demolished. Like they're just going to leave the bare tracks of what's going to be left.
Oh, wow. Okay. Dang.
That's the rumor. We don't know.
Right. We don't know for sure. Right. Yeah. Who knows? I've read like 7 different articles that are contradicting each other.
Yeah.
Because it's new, like brand new. No one really knows what's going on other than Disney. Yeah.
Well, do they know what's going on?
Right. I hope they can get back on their feet. That's pretty much all I wanted to add about Splash Mountain. Kind of sad it's changing, but hopefully it'll be good. And not much else to it. It is. Yeah. I'll reiterate. It is a little sad that they didn't really use it as a teaching tool, but like you said, they haven't in 40 years. So it's like, when are they, right?
Yeah. I used it as a teaching tool. I would take my son and we would discuss it, and I would point out certain aspects of stories and we would discuss it. But I'm a Disney nerd and a historian, and I could put that in context. And
right.
But how many families have access to that information or look that up? I mean, you don't, right? So
very few.
Yeah, very few. But yeah, it's gonna be sad because I remember my son riding it for a long time, and we used to sit in the back, because he was so little, right? So his last ride was the first time sitting in the very front.
Oh, so you get all soaked.
I've never been so soaked. Lucky enough, we were close to our hotel, and we went back and changed because I've ridden that ride. I don't know how many times. I've never got so much water. I mean, I thought the boat was just going to sink down. I'm like, how much water is in this boat? I mean, it was amazing how much. It was crazy.
Oh man. All right. So let's see if we got any comments. All right. So we'll move on to the next topic. Let's see. That is kind of the next discussion point. So should controversial films be erased or self-censored, or should the public kind of decide for themselves? Yeah.
Do you want to go first on this?
Yeah, I could go first on that. So I'm kind of on the side of, I think the public should decide for themselves, like have the opportunity to. Just because, at least for me, growing up, you hear whole Song of the South, right? It's this awful movie and whatnot. But I couldn't figure that out on my own, like there's no way I could really see it, not until recently when I I think it was Japan or somebody, they just put it in the public domain like 10 years ago, if that. So to me, that kind of creates like speculations, maybe, false history and all that, when if they just released it, you wouldn't have any of that. Now, I do agree it's not a general audience film because of the negative depictions of Black people and whatnot. But at the same time, I do think, like you mentioned earlier, they put a label on it like Warner Brothers did where you can't skip it or anything like that. I think that would have been a better approach. So you didn't have the speculation. You didn't have all these bootleggers, because like this right here is a bootleg film from Europe. Like there's tons of tapes and all of that. That just creates unnecessary black markets and whatnot. Those are kind of my thoughts overall. Kind of let the people decide for themselves, if that makes sense.
I'm a case by case base on each film. I think like this movie should definitely be, what I would say is we should have access to it, but it should not have a public release, would be my way. I wish Disney would have a way for us to view these films, but once again, it's not just for, like if you put on Disney Plus and just any kid or anyone goes in and he does it, and then they could definitely use certain aspects and frame their conversation of saying, hey, I remember Song of the South. They seemed happy after the Civil War. So when I hear that it was not good, that kind of throws your mind off a little. Like, you know what I mean? I've watched this movie so many times. I have that. But I wish they would have it maybe more accessible for parents, maybe as like, hey, these are what we call our education films, or our stuff where you get it and it doesn't just come with the film, but it comes with materials to help you use it and teach it. Disney used to have that called the Disney Classroom, I think, where teachers could do that. I have the Donald Duck math one as one of the things. It's been released as just a normal DVD, but they used to have like, I think it was called the Disney Classroom, but maybe a section on Disney Plus where you have to have a code, like a parent puts it in so a kid can't do it, and have like a historian introduce the film and show you the importance, and maybe say, hey, go check out the website. We have some worksheets for you, just some more materials around these films. Because I agree that, one, I like that Disney chooses to do it more than being pressured as much from the public or even by the government to ban it. So I'm fine with each company saying, hey, we're no longer going to release this because of these things. But I'm also a person who doesn't want an edited version. As a historian, I want the unedited. We could talk about like The Office and other scenes that, movies that do that. But I think like this film needs to have a little bit harder to get your hands on, but I don't want it to be impossible to get your hands on. If that makes sense. Right. I like that Fantasia cut out Sunflower. She was a centaur that was totally racist in it. They cut her out of the movie, so I buy the DVD. But I also wish that on maybe the DVD, there's like, here's why we edited it out, like ignoring things. So Disney is world famous for hiding some of their background movies and stuff, like The Grocery Boy with Mickey Mouse, because he rides around in blackface. That's not released publicly. So I kind of wish that Disney would just say, hey, these were made in our past, but here's why they're racist. This is what mistakes the company made back then, and why. But it's hard for a company because people have their image and they don't want, do we tarnish Disney by doing that? So you can't make anyone happy with this decision. So my opinion is, wish they had more easy access, but they should not have a public release. I think that's where I would come out for Song of the South.
Nice. Yeah. I actually read somewhere Whoopi Goldberg talked about how she would want to introduce the movie, like be a kind of like how Leonard Maltin did. Like she would want to do something like that, because she's kind of in the same opinion. It shouldn't be completely self-centered.
Yeah, I have the Donald Duck's Treasures DVD, and these has this,
Hmm.
and this has the Donald Duck's propaganda films, and like there's like five of them that are completely not appropriate today. Very would be racist for the Japanese and even to the Germans, in that sense that they are not depicted well because we're at war with them. But
Hmm.
to get to them, you have to like really look for them. They're not easy to find. They're not like, oh, play all and do it. And then before you watch it, Leonard Moulton introduces the film and explains what they are and why they did what they did. So I don't know why Disney doesn't do that. Like literally release the film. I maybe make a collection of films that call it their they're films that life lessons to our mistakes or something, and just
Something like
release
that.
them.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I agree with you. So
Yeah, kind of like the Warner Brothers Censored 11. They did a release of that a while back.
the censored 11.
Yeah, they had these shorts that I don't know if they censored it or someone censored them, but they were shorts that were deemed like really offensive, and they made a whole DVD collection, introduction,
Okay.
and all of that, and they released it to the public, and kind of said, uh, we recognize that they're racist and negative depictions, but at the same time, we recognize, erasing it is just as bad as saying as it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, maybe something like that for Song of the South, I think would be good.
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers gets to do more of that because like a lot of people will look for that. Besides of with Disney, a lot of people stumble across things and sometimes
Mm,
say, "Oh, it's Disney stamp later. My kid could watch it." Well, no, you should watch it
right, right.
before you show your kid. You know what I mean? So that's why I don't mind like the introduction. Like they do that topic of Dumbo on
Mm,
Disney Plus. They put that little, hey, some of the depictions might be will offensive um, to people, and I think that's fine. I just wish Disney would go further and explain why and why not. What was the purpose behind it? But I'm all about education, like learn about it.
right.
So yeah, I think we're getting there. I wish one day Disney would just say, hey, release it through the Disney Movie Club or something and put it out there because I agree. Hiding it doesn't do it any service. But also, if you release it massively, like to Target and stuff, it could maybe do some hurt some people along the way. So find that balance in between. Of
Right.
Disney Movie Club, you have to really look for what you're buying.
Hmm. Right.
So
And the people who would know what it is would use that service. Like they would go through
yeah,
that. They wouldn't stumble upon it, like you said.
yeah,
Yeah. There was another point I wanted to mention. That's pretty much all I had about the uh, this discussion point here.
yeah.
Excuse me. Oh, actually, I just remember now. So there's a film called one of their films. Oh, I think it was Make Mine Music. They had a short in it that they just completely cut out and erased, and I didn't know this.
The Hatford, the cowboy one. Yeah,
Yes, it's the Hatfield and no Martins and the Coys. That was what it was
Martin.
called.
It's based off the Hatfield, that family. I can't think of their name in the McCoys. That the forever long feuding family that even went on Family Feud and fought each other. So
Yes. And so my kind of worry there is growing up, I just watched that DVD not knowing anything about it, and then coming to find out later on there's a whole short that's missing. It's like,
mhm.
oh, I didn't even know this existed. So I mean, that's kind of my worry too, is that people are going to discover it, maybe be offended or whatever it is, because there is no way of knowing it existed. They're just like, oh no, we don't talk about this. If that makes
So
sense.
yeah, see, for that one, I don't think Disney ever hid that they like edited out. Like
Hmm.
same with Fantasia, they never like hit it. Where I feel like Song of the South has been more of a taboo conversation for Disney, and I don't know why. Some
Hmm.
people, it doesn't seem like they have the open conversation, but like with Fantasia, that oh yeah, it was bad. We shouldn't have done it. We've edited it out and done it. Like I feel like there's been more conversation around those things, like because the McCoy one it's really violent, and we're
Mm.
going to release it to kids. We don't want the violence and the gun violence that was happening when they kind of released that DVD was kind of a big topic, and even today, like, so should kids just put, once again, Disney has that brand issue where a family goes,
Yeah.
can I just put this on? Oh, what's this? Like, that's different things. So, but once again, I wish they put it as a special feature. This is what we edited out, So
Right.
yeah, but yeah, I agree. It's a tough one because you want the unedited stuff, right? So that's why some of these movies I like that, streaming wise, they say we're going to give you the edited version. But if you buy the DVD or buy the Blu-ray, you get the unedited version. You have to make a more of a purchase, like all these late, like 30 Rock and stuff like. But 30 Rock just changed. Supposedly, their last DVDs, they put the edited version on it. So we'll see what happens in the future with that. But once again, when we're talking about it, George Lucas is the famous one that won't give us the original.
Exactly. That guy. We got some
Yeah.
comments here. Nathan Hale here. What's up, Nate? Here late. We'll check out on the recorded stream. Oh, thanks. I don't know what's been discussed, but I love this one. I think Disney should release it with content warning, kind of like they did with Peter Pan. And last comment. I believe Song of the South is a popular movie to hate because of the labels it has received throughout the years. Yet we're not canceling other old movies with worse problems. Ooh, that's an interesting point, too. Because even in that Make Mine music, there's still a story about two hats, and there's a huge gunfight at the end of that one. It's like they're kind of picky and choosy, it seems, with the ones they decide
and
to
I guess
self-censor.
Like to speak to that kind of question, but that's Disney's right to choose that. Like, this is Disney's. Disney chose not to release it. Disney product, because like for me, I'm shocked that Holiday Inn, like a lot of people like, hey, have you watched Holiday Inn? And go, do you know what's in that like issue? And like I remember watching White Christmas with holy cow, when they dance in the black suits. What is that called? The minstrel show. And I'm like, oh wow, that's like, I'm like, wow, didn't realize this was coming. So he's right. We don't always like do that, but once again, different studios, different choices. I think with Disney, they have a little issue because their brand is steered towards kids more than adults. Like Holiday Inn, like I don't know any 5-year-old's going to say, let me put that on. You know what I mean? Some of these older classic movies, adults are putting it on and stuff like that. So yeah, it's hard because I watch a lot of James Stewart's Westerns, and there's some awful depictions in there, but I can still buy them. But once again, I think you can't always compare because once again, Disney brand, if Disney released it, like I could see a lot of kids going out and buying and not knowing. So, but it's a hard choice for that.
For sure. It's not an easy decision. It's not one I would want to make.
Yeah.
Got Nathan again. Great point on Holiday Inn. Same thing, Swing Time. That's a good point on it, depending on the studio. I love James Stewart. And yeah, definitely some dated aspects. Yes. Nathan Hale, guys, super into old movies as well. Loves James Stewart. That's his favorite actor. So go and follow his channel too. He's got some great videos. And he did a video with me recently about Some Like It Hot. So look forward to that one next couple weeks here. Yeah.
I'm right now going through all of James Stewart films. So I started that in 2022. And I've almost done them all. There's a handful ones that I'm still needing, but I've done almost all of them yet. So I'm a big James Stewart fan too. He's a great guy.
Oh yeah, he's great. I love him in a Philadelphia Story because it's kind of different from how you see him in like It's a Wonderful Life, right? He's kind of more a little silly in a Philadelphia Story.
Mine's The Rope.
I need to see that one still. There's a lot of Hitchcock films I'm still watching.
Yeah.
It says we need to talk. Yes. I think you guys should do a James Stewart thing. I think that'd be cool. All right, so we'll move on to the last topic here. And that is, would you recommend this movie? So this is kind of the concluding segment here, I guess. So yeah, why don't you go first? Would you recommend this movie even after all the things we discussed here today?
I would recommend this movie in a specific context, with someone, once again, having the background and history. I would not recommend this movie just putting it on and not knowing anything behind it. Because, two, I don't think you would. You're not watching this movie because it's a great film. This film does not stand, I think, on its own as a whole. But I would still, like you said, we love the animation aspects, and there's certain parts that are just magical to this film that you would hate to lose. But you need that background and that knowledge, I think, beforehand to go in and watching it. It's the same thing I say to people who watch Citizen Kane. I watch, people who watch Citizen Kane go, I don't understand the importance. Why is this movie great? Well, here's why. And now go rewatch it, and usually they could enjoy it more. This one, you need that background. If you just watch it, it does not go well, and it could hurt and offend some people, understandably, without that context. And so I would say it's a movie that, for any film buff who likes to watch movies and see it, I say watch it. You need to see it once and be part of the conversation and give your opinion. But do I recommend it for sitting around with family time? I am a little iffy on that one.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I think this is definitely for the avid Disney fan, film fan. But like you said, I don't think it's really a general audience movie. I don't think it's as offensive as other films like Birth of the Nation or other movies that. Boy, that I got a lot of flack for reviewing that one, but it really is a mediocre Disney movie in the same vein. I think it's fun and fancy free, so I don't think you'll enjoy it as much as, say, like Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Cinderella. This is definitely not up there with them. This is
so dear to my heart. I love So Dear to My Heart. Yeah. So because you have the live action, a little bit of the anime, yeah. There's other Disney films that are better for it.
For sure.
Yeah. But don't give up the song Zippity Doo Dah Day. That's my thing. That song is so classic, and I love it. But I can understand, because a lot of people who watch it go, that's the happy, jovial, story of that the blacks during that time, they were just happy, that so that song in itself and its depiction can go worry too, but I still like the song. So, and
it's a great song.
I think a lot of people do. Yeah. But I think the song has lived on itself, because a lot of people's first time hearing the song is actually not even on Splash Mountain. It's not from this movie. It's from walking around the Disney parks or in the Disney stores or other Disney films and other people singing it. So I think the song could live outside of the movie. And so this one's a very tough one, because I do know, and I've read a lot of people who have been hurt by this film and been offended by this film. And so it's hard, because I can't be in their shoes sometimes, because who I am. But so this is a tough film. And yes, and also, just because there's other films that are bad doesn't mean this one should be okay and passed on, because there's worse ones out there, right? So I think I think you're doing it right. We're judging this as its own, not comparing it too much to the other ones. So does this movie? Yeah. I think it shouldn't be lost because of the importance of its history. So I want people to see it, but I don't want it, like you said, general audience.
Yeah. Kind of a side note, I remember as a kid in elementary school, someone had a VHS tape of a bunch of Disney songs, and I just remember the Zippity Doo Dah on that. And I just remember loving that. I always thought it was a great song.
Yep.
And That's like the only thing Disney has ever released in the U.S. of that. I just realized it's that
Yep.
small little sing-along
Well,
VHS tape.
and the books.
And the books.
There's a whole bunch of There's a whole bunch of books, and that was so funny. I was in Arizona, and I was working somewhere, and I was put into a school, and I went up to the library. They had all those Song of the South books just ready to check out. I read them, and I just couldn't believe it because I don't think that library knows how much the books are worth to a collector.
Yeah.
But yeah, but even those books are pretty bad for. I'm like, whew, I don't know if I could let my kid read that because they're bad for its time too. So, like Tar Baby, I don't know if you heard about that book.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
Not that much though. If you want to get into that, yeah. What was that about?
I would need to do other research before I could get into
Oh,
it, but it's not, it should not just be enjoyed. It should be studied, if that makes sense.
yeah. But I guess to the point of you finding those books, you had the choice though to say, yeah, I don't want my kids to read this. You know,
Yeah.
you were able to make that decision. So I wish we could do that with the movies. I guess my overall point.
Yeah. So, but once again, Disney has to make money, and will releasing it bring more backlash for them, or would it bring more money? I mean, and so a company has to decide that. That's why I think if they released it in like an educational wing of their company, saying that it's not mass production, it's not for, these are for historians. We want to make it released for people to study, kind of like the Warren Brothers. You said, like, we know what it is. We want to release it to the public, and maybe take the money and donate it to an organization instead of taking a profit. Do something else with it. And I think, because I do think it's important to watch these old films in its context and learn from them and see how far we've come, or see where we still need to go to move forward, because film helps us. I think movies help us understand culture of its time and understanding. Watching a movie like watching Saving Private Ryan about World War II, quite differently watching a movie from 1950s about World War II and how they talk about it.
Definitely.
So we get to learn their aspects of what they think about and how the movie was being that topic was being portrayed at the time. So I find film very important to our understanding of our past.
Definitely. It's definitely a time capsule. That's kind of how I approach it. It's kind of encapsulating everything that people thought and believed in that specific time period about that specific subject.
Yep. Won't disagree with that.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, I'll take off that banner. So that's kind of the end of our discussion here. But before we end, why don't you show off those books now that you're bigger screened here, so that people can check those out.
So we have Disney's Most Notorious Film by Jason Spur. This one's all about Song of the South. And then you have Who's Afraid of the Song of the South by Jim, I can't pronounce his name, Krosky. He's a famous Disney historian. He writes a lot. Another one, if you want to look at a lot of different writers on a lot of different topics of Disney that takes a different point of view, you also have Diversity in Disney Film, critical essays on race, ethnic, gender, sexuality, and disability. It's very, very interesting takes on it. Do I agree with everything that's written in these books? No, because if I did, it wouldn't be fun reading them.
That's right. That's right. Won't spark conversation.
Yep.
All right. Looks like we got a couple more comments here. There we go. It was showing up on my other screen, not this one. Okay, love the discussion here. While I'm intrigued by these books, have a good night both. Well, thanks for stopping by, Nathan. We appreciate that. And like I said, at the end of the month, he and I, last month we recorded a video about Some Like It Hot, so stay tuned for that. That should be the 25th.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Evan. This was really fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a blast.
And why don't you go ahead and plug your channel and anything you got coming on before we close today?
Well, my channel hasn't been very active, but I'm hoping to launch it. One of the things I was working on is I'm going to start watching all the live action remakes of the movies of Disney and kind of comparing and contrasting of what they do well, what they do wrong with the live action remakes. So I'm trying to change my channel into more of a critical essay, but I also want to do some other stuff and just get on. So I'm hoping to get my first 2023 video out in the next week or so and get it posted. I think my first video I'm going to do is in defense of Jurassic Park, The Last Dominion.
Oh, well, I'm definitely checking that out because I hated that movie.
Yeah, I did not hate that movie, and I actually quite enjoyed it, and it made perfect. A lot of people that criticized the aspect of it is like, those were kind of my favorite parts of this movie. So I was challenged by another channel, You Hear Us Out, and said for me to make it. So I've kind of written out my notes, and I hope to make it soon.
Awesome. Well, I'll look forward to checking that out. I'll definitely add my thoughts on that too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, thanks again, Evan, for coming on. And like I said,
Thank
I'll try
you.
to do these maybe once a month. Haven't really decided yet. But this will be in conjunction with the other live streams I do. I'm trying to add more content for you guys to check out. And on that note, this has been Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin. This has been my guest and co-host, Evan. Take care, everyone.